Live from WRCT Studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Total Education Hour, the talk shop for teachers, parents, and administrators. Here's your host of the show, Neil Haley, the Total Tutor.
All right, it's Total Education Hour time. It's very interesting when I decide where my direction, 10 years in radio, and my brand always changes. And my guest tonight's going to get me back into the education sphere. I've been having a lot of conversations regarding security, about different things in education. So I'm excited to welcome the program Dr. Sunny Magana. Dr. Sunny, how are you? And I'm excited to have you on the program.
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here as well. Thank you very much for the gracious invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you think about specifically enough education, what do you think? We hear too much negativity, but we also are just so concerned about what's happening today that we don't want to break down what's the best methods. We're afraid to ruffle feathers. And in the last 10 years, I've seen that all the time. We want to have fights instead of have a conversation.
I think that's a really powerful insight. I think we need to raise the level of three things. We need to raise the level of the discussion so that it is a dialogue and that we can engage in a discussion that is based upon the second thing, which is best practices, not just what works or what works well, but what works best. Because that is then focused on the third thing, which is what the best quality evidence tells us that what it looks like. So we need to start, I guess I went forward, so I should work out backwards. Let's start with the evidence. Let's start with the highest quality educational research evidence that exists that tells us what are the things that work best. And then have a conversation with every educational stakeholder around how do we go about doing that, and how do we go about measuring what works best in education?
See, when you talk about that, and you're raising a lot of great points regarding this. Why is it we cannot take, like, for example, and I've kind of expanded in many ways as a business owner and a different person as a talk show host, expanding my horizons. I constantly want to learn. Why are we afraid in education to look what works best? Why do we want to stick to the same old, and why don't we want to look at research and allow people like yourself that really break this down and investigate this for what's the best practices in education?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Neil, and it's complicated, but I think there are some contributing forces. One of them is that we don't like change. Human nature is such that we just don't like being disrupted or have our patterns or processes disrupted. And that's as true in education as in government or finance. We like to do what we like to do. We like to do what we know works. And when we're confronted with some information that is provocative and kind of makes us shake our beliefs and challenges our assumptions, we tend to shy away from that. So here's a kind of common truth. In education, we tend to cling to comforting lies rather than face the uncomfortable truth. Yeah,
you're right. And because I think that if we can just go about our business and just do things the way we're used to doing them and not getting out of our comfort zone, everything's fine. And as I talked about before, we are in a battle in education because of how people want to define education in a certain way. We want unions want to keep teaching the same way. Then you have other people that want to reform things, but they're battling each other and just banging heads instead of really getting along. You saw, Dr. Sonny, what was happening specifically enough with the newest candidates for president of the United States in the Democratic Party. They're already knocking them on the news channels as, oh, by the way, they are really pro charter school. They're pro this, they're pro that, instead of really looking and examining things. And they're very challenging. And like I said, if people didn't agree with you, they're going to come and attack you instead of really figuring out the research. And that's where we have to change education, in my opinion. But I want to spend a lot of time talking about specifically how your research in your newest book, but also having dialogue and questions about it. But do you agree with me? I think that that's the thing. I'm telling you right now, if we wanted to gather teachers that are motivated today, and I said, hey, come on my show and come on as your real self, how many school districts would even allow it, Dr. Sonny? Not many.
Yeah, I think teachers would love to do it, though, because there are so many great stories out there that'll dispel some of the myths. I said, comforting lies. I think I should soften that to comforting myths. We tend to like comforting myths rather than uncomfortable truth. But I think you nailed it. Stepping out of our comfort zone is where authentic learning takes place, and that needs to be nurtured. There needs to be an environment where that's psychologically safe so that individuals can take cognitive and intellectual risks while being psychologically safe. And that's a tricky one. How do we create learning environments for all learners, not just students, but teachers, principals, administrators, state superintendents? How can we create environments that are psychologically and emotionally safe and allow individuals to step far out of their comfort zone, because that's where real learning takes place.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, you've written many books, but specifically enough, Disruptive Classroom Technologies. Why did you write this book?
Yeah, that's another great question. I started researching the impacts of technology in education in 1984 when I was a graduate student at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And I noticed a pattern very early on that technology was being used to sort of as a babysitter for kids.
Right.
And the technology had an increase in engagement immediately. But almost as quickly, that student engagement dropped off really quickly. And that confounded me because I thought, well, this is supposed to be, so transformational. 35 years later, I've seen that same pattern repeat itself over and over and over again, where technologies are acquired, students get wired, and then they get tired. And that peak in engagement is artificial, and it's based on the novelty of the experience itself. It's called the novelty effect. So whether it's laptops or Palm Pilots or interactive display panels or mobile devices, there's a pretty quick artificial bump in student engagement, which is almost always followed by a decline in student engagement because the novelty wears off and they get bored. And that confounded me.
Right.
I've been researching this problem, the wicked problem of the low impact of technology in education for 4 decades. And what compelled me to write this book was I've synthesized all my research into a method that has been shown to quadruple student achievement. And I have to tell the world about it. So that's really what compels me. If you got a good solution, as educators, we want to share it. So I'm sharing this with anybody who will listen, that this is how we can see significant gains in student achievement. And it's heavily research-based. It's grounded in our existing knowledge of the science of teaching and learning. And then you add technologies to support those processes, and you get huge gains.
Yeah, and
that's not always that way.
Right, exactly. And so, why are people afraid and fearful of technology? And different studies come out, and why are we fearful of it when that's exactly what we need to do? Because thinking about this, all my life is technology now. All the businesses I'm involved in, if I become more technically knowledgeable, the more money I can make and the more opportunity and the more efficient I can become.
Yeah.
Why are we afraid to do that in education? And then the teachers cannot do what they tell the kids to do in the classroom.
Yeah. Well, again, a great question, and this is not a simple problem. This is a really complex problem. It's really defined as a wicked problem, and that's from the literature. A wicked problem is a problem that's multifaceted, it's really complex, it's intractable, it's ill-defined, it's ill-structured, and it has no existing problem or no existing solution yet. And the technology influx into education has led to really a negative effect on student learning. So let me just talk about the research, some numbers, just a little bit, and I'll make the point that I want to make. John Hattie is a legendary education researcher, and he does what's called meta-analysis. He does an analysis of many, many studies. So he synthesized over 10,000 studies looking at various aspects of computer technology in education. And the reality is that the average effect of technology is actually less than the average impact of the average teacher in an average school. It actually has a deleterious effect on student learning. And that's confounding to people who have a bias. And that may be why people are hesitant to think about using technology, or they think that the technologies will add changes that, by the very nature of having the technology, by bias. So let me explain that. There's two different types of biases people have. One is a value positive bias. And those are the folks that think, oh, if you just add technology, all of our problems will go away. Students will automatically be transformed and learning will automatically be accelerated just by simply adding technology. That's not correct. That's a bias that skews perspective. Then there's the other bias, which is a value negative bias. And those are people who think that, if you just add technology into education, it will automatically reduce value and reduce instructional quality and reduce student achievement. I suggest we take a value neutral approach. We all need to recalibrate our thinking and recognize that digital education tools have no inherent value in and of themselves, which kind of sounds like heresy.
Yeah.
They have no inherent value. The value is made possible by how the technology is used and by whom.
Yeah, but it's crazy when you think about it, and you think about no inherent value. So when we get back, we're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Sunny and really go into disruptive classroom technologies and understand how we can use technology to advance in the classroom. We're learning a little bit about where he's coming from, his research, and what classroom teachers can do, but also parents can do, and everyone can look at in technology. Yeah. You're listening to Total Education Hour on 88.3 WRCT in Pittsburgh, and we're streaming live at WRCT.org. Hashtag WRCT. When we get back, more with Dr. Sunny. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Education Hour on 88.3 WRCT in Pittsburgh, and we're streaming live at WRCT.org. Hashtag WRCT, and I'm with Dr. Sunny Magna and Magana, and we're having a really good conversation regarding disruptive classroom technologies, but really kind of education, starting at why we are afraid to debate education. Why are we not willing to get out of our comfort zone? So once you figured out that we are valuing kids the wrong way when teaching technology, what were your next steps?
Well, the next step was I had to figure out what would be a desirable outcome. What are we shooting for here? And that's where the essential human capacity of imagination comes directly into play. I had to be really thoughtful and do these thought experiments where I would imagine what classrooms would look like when students are using digital tools to accelerate their understanding of content, to accelerate how they represent that understanding, and to accelerate how they share and teach one another. And I imagined a classroom where students had a doubling of academic achievement. And over the past 35 years, I've been working on making that imagined classroom a reality. And it takes a lot of trial and error. It's hard work. You have to kind of put your ideas through the refutation of science in order to really hazard your prize. And so I've been doing peer-reviewed research in my classrooms as a teacher, as a building principal, as a technology director. Now I'm an author and a researcher. And I've distilled those 35 years of research into methods that are highly reliable. And it's not just because I say so, but it's what the peer-reviewed research evidence strongly suggests. So your point about having a conversation in education is really well taken, Neil, because in many parts of human endeavors, evidence is relied upon. We rely upon evidence in architecture, in engineering, in science, in mathematics, and science. We look at the numbers and we play the odds by playing the most reliable methods forward. Education needs to embrace an evidence basis for everything that we do. But when it comes to educational technology, my fear is that we've been focused too much on opinion and propaganda, not evidence.
And when you see opinion and propaganda is we're creating research without really having measurable results or a true sample and research. And while, again, the opinion means, hey, I think it works in the classroom. I did it myself without even really testing lots of kids to see it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But we've been really awash in so much noise in the educational technology market from vendors who have a conflict of interest. They want to sell stuff in education. So they're propagandists that tell individual stories. It's like they have personal opinions or even collective opinions with very low sample size, no scientific investigation, no systematic observation, no controls. They just tell case stories and sell their technologies based on very flimsy evidence. A recent estimate was that the United States is closing in on an $80 billion spent on classroom technologies, and we really don't have much to show for it yet. That's a staggering statistic, isn't it?
Yeah. And when I think about that, I'd say to myself, well, the problem is we're creating technology in a lot of ways that, hey, let's have them play games, right, to learn, without any evidence base that the kids are really focusing on what they're learning. So I understand where you're at. The first step when you research, and that's the other thing, is getting educators and even professors and even administrators to understand that they're scientists. You got to be a scientist. Yeah. You got to test, revise, test, figure it out, and then finally when you see that there is the valuable research that shows it's research based, then you implement it, and that's just not happening. Are you? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think you're absolutely right. That's you have to recognize what the science says, what the evidence base is. And in addition to being a scientist in the classroom, teachers are also artists. So I really encourage people to embrace the art and science of teaching and learning. And that means learning what the research evidence says, the scientific principles, and then artfully implementing them in the classroom.
Yeah. Well, and
it's a wonderful thing.
But it's difficult to figure it out. So how do you kind of come up with areas so that to find the right technology in the classroom? Do you think that we're still not even at this point in time when kids are on iPads or kids are using laptops and books and we're more and more away from books and we're using, PowerPoint and we're using a whiteboard that's or a smart board? That's still not enough technology, is it? To really help these kids learn specifically, right?
Yeah, it depends on how it's used and by whom. So let me tell you, I'll give you a metaphor. What I think we've been doing is we're trying to put a digital spin on an industrial age education system.
Yes.
And we've been going along this path, doing just a planar shift, and we're really essentially putting a 21st century frosting on a 20th century donut. Yeah. It's the same donut, but we're just putting technology sheen on it. And fundamentally, the practices that happen in classrooms are this. It's a tell and practice model of instruction, where teachers tell students what knowledge is important to memorize, and then the students go and memorize it, and then respond or retrieve that memory on some assessment. That was a model that it may have worked, probably didn't work very well at the turn of the 20th century. That model is woefully insufficient at preparing kids to address really complex learning challenges once they leave school. So we need to shift our goalposts away from summative assessment as the only means of determining success, and instead focus on whole child and whole system mastery and well-being. That's a shift in consciousness. And it sounds kind of highfalutin, but I have some really precise, practical, logical ways to get there.
And that's the challenge and difficulty. So basically, the one thing, if you're going to use technology in the classroom, teachers need to be trained. Administrators need to be trained. School districts need to be trained. And the lack of training is the first thing. So if we would say that Common Core has failed in specific aspects, it might not be Common Core, the standards. It's how the teachers have been trained in Common Core. Correct, Dr. Sonny? It's not. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the Common Core isn't necessarily a bad thing. Frankly, I think there are too many standards, and if we don't change our instructional model, the processes, then the Common Core becomes kind of an enemy of the people, and it shouldn't be. It should be a pathway forward.
But the teachers don't know. But the teachers don't know how to teach it. So the teachers don't know how to teach it. So the same thing when it comes to technology, we are still, as you said, in a factory type system. Think about how it's hard to even get people to use specific tools before this technology developed. Use film strip or use or show films, but they never were able to implement it into strategies and standards for kids to learn as well as direct instruction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I want to be really clear. I'm in no way putting any blame on teachers.
No, teachers it's not. It's the lack. It's
heroic work every day.
I agree.
And I know. And I know you agree with me. You agree with me. It's heroic work. Our educational system and the beliefs upon which our educational system have been founded are actually flawed. So let me go back in history. Over 130 years ago, in the late 19th century, a group of college presidents, including the presidents of Harvard and University of Michigan and Vassar, they formed a group called the Committee of 10. And the Committee of 10 decided, this whole education thing in the United States is getting out of hand. We need to have a common curriculum. So the Common Core isn't a new idea. It was really kind of an offshoot of this Committee of 10 that met in 1890s. But they had a flawed notion of human learning, and they called it mental discipline. They believed that the brain was like a muscle. And in order to really effectively use the brain, you have to give it repetitive cycles of drill and practice, drill and practice, drill and practice. And that's how the brain develops. That notion of mental discipline was debunked in the early 20th century as not based in any evidence, but was just an opinion. And so the systems that we have today really have that residue of this mental discipline myth and so we give kids drill and practice. And now we add technology and we just give them digital worksheets. That's digital worksheets. No. That's a 21st century residue of the 20th century donut. We need to fundamentally shift what we mean about teaching and learning so that we move away from just simple memorization and move towards, even though that's a start. We need to then move into deeper learning where students are following their own interests around that knowledge that they're interacting with, connected to things that are meaningful to them in their lives, and then transfer their knowledge. Those are three critical stages: surface learning, deeper learning, and knowledge transfer. When we move into that system, student learning and passion and contribution flourishes.
Yeah, definitely. It's something.
It really does.
And you have to do it. So I guess what we're hearing is that technology needs to go to the 21st century. So when I think of technology going to the 21st century, it needs to enhance what a teacher does. I'm sure, Dr. Sonny, you're cool with direct instruction. You want to walk into a classroom, observe, and see direct instruction. But you also want to see some small group. You also want to see some specific word student-led instruction. You don't want the teacher to be the facilitator the entire time. You want to mix. And our problem is we have specific educators, principals that say, hey, I only like doing it this way. I'm not. So you walk into a classroom and hear a loud classroom, as we saw in a news article that came out, I guess this week, that they said really kids don't learn as well in noise, just because we thought, hey, cooperative learning's the way we need to go. And they just teach the classes entirely cooperative learning. So when you're talking technology, sometimes too much technology is not a good thing, right? You're wanting a mix of education, instruction, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I can describe this framework that I developed, which actually does that very thing. It shows that there needs to be a sequence.
Yes.
A precise sequence of teaching and learning strategies, and a precise sequence of technology's use to enhance those strategies. That's what leads to this extraordinary gain in student achievement. But you need a framework. You need a conceptual framework so that well, what should I be doing? Which stage am I in? What should I be doing? What practices and what things should I be doing in order to get through the stage to get to the next stage, right? That's what a conceptual framework is. So let me tell you. So this is how I came up with the T3 framework for innovation, which is the framework that I have in my book, Disruptive Classroom Technologies. This is exactly how I came up with that framework. It was 1976. I was living in my hometown of Stratford, New Jersey, and I taught myself how to play guitar when I was 14 years old. And I didn't see guitar playing as learning because it was so much fun. I had a lot of passion for it. I was really enjoying listening to great songs on the radio and then translating them onto my guitar. So I was playing the Eagles and Beatles and John Denver. Remember Country Roads?
Yes, for sure.
I would play those songs, and I would just hear them on the radio, buy a little chord book, and translate what I heard from the radio onto my 6-string guitar. And I'd be playing around the campfires in South Jersey, camping on the Pine Barrens and playing these songs. And then I heard Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, wow.
And it totally disrupted my world. Eddie Van Halen totally rocked my world. And when I heard Eruption from Van Halen 1, I realized I want to learn what Eddie does. I can't go back to Country Roads anymore. I can't keep playing the same songs. I want
you make those changes for sure.
So I happened to be listening to WMMR radio in Philadelphia, and I think John DeBella was the DJ in the Delaware Valley radio station, and he had Eddie Van Halen on the radio program, and he asked Eddie, do you have any advice for budding guitar gods in the Delaware Valley? And Eddie Van Halen, I swear to God, said, yes, I do. Kids, This is your Uncle Eddie speaking. If you're the kind of kid that's sitting around a campfire playing the guitar and listening to songs on the radio, playing the guitar, keep doing that. That's healthy. That's really a great place to start. But if you want to get better, you got to go through another phase. And I call that the Chuck Berry phase. Because every great guitarist, I don't care who you are, every great guitarist has gone through and mastered the Chuck Berry phase of playing music, which is rock and roll. All the riffs, the blues riffs, different transpositions. You got to learn all the positions up and down the neck. You got to be able to play fluidly.
Yes.
You got to transform into a rock and roller before you can get to the stage where you're really innovating and doing your own sound and playing in your own way. And that struck me as genius. I'm 14 years old. I'm listening to Eddie Van Halen.
Exactly.
Giving me a framework. He gave me a conceptual framework to help me think through the stage of guitar playing that I was in, whether I was translating, transforming, or transcending. And that's precisely the words I use in my technology framework, my framework for innovation. There's translational technology use, transformational technology use, and transcendent technology use.
Wow.
But what I see all over the country, frankly, all over the world, is translational technology use. That's
right.
like teachers using technology.
Then they're translating it to understand into the real world, to what they're doing, instead of really transforming themselves into something better. And we get back, I want to kind of delve into see if I'm in the on the right track on this. We're talking to Dr. Sunny Magana here on the Neil Haley Show. The Total Education Hour, disruptive classroom technologies. When we get back, we'll talk more. You're listening to Total Education Hour, 88.3 WRCT in Pittsburgh, and we're streaming live at WRCT.org, hashtag WRCT. When we get back, more with Dr. Sunny. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Education Hour and having a great conversation with Dr. Sunny Magana, author of Disruptive Classroom Technologies. And you came up with this idea based on another principle in life. I believe all education, life is education, education is life. Anything we talk about, if we explain things and teach somebody something, regardless of what we're doing, it's education. And that's what I try to do on the radio for the last 10 years, is educate people in so many different aspects of life, from celebrity talk to anything, and really learn from that person that I interview. And that's what we're learning today as we've been breaking down our conversation. Now, when you talked about everyone wants to do translational technology, they look at the technology, they see what it looks like, and then they try to translate it to what they think. They're not developing themselves, right? Am I on the correct track?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're absolutely on the right track. What most folks are doing is translating from an analog experience using pencil and paper, or an overhead projector, or a chalkboard, or Mimeo sheets. They're translating those experiences, those administrative tasks, into a digital form. So then now the teachers send emails, or they put their notes on some presentation software, or or we use digital tools to automate the testing of students. So there's two elements in translational technologies: automation and consumption. And that's just, we're translating from pencil and paper or book to a digital tool. When we just use technology to translate from analog to digital, we can expect a very low effect on student achievement.
No, or even lower, because it's not
technology is used.
And pretty much not seeing any growth, or even less growth. Like, okay, we're just going to make sure everything's online for homework. Okay, that's great, but then you have a computer screen that's going to disrupt the kids when they're at home, when they need not to have so much screen time. So how do we and make it transformative? You have a framework to tell us how to do that.
Well, I do, and we got to start with that reality that translational technologies isn't bad, but keep doing that. But if you want to get better, you got to go through another stage. And that's what I call transformational technologies. And translational technologies is kind of like teachers or educators playing the same song over and over and over again.
Right.
After a while, you're not going to get any better. You need to learn a new way of teaching and facilitating learning. And that is what's transformational. So in the transformational domain, there are two elements: production and contribution.
Okay.
So let me define that. The first I call production, because I want a world where students are more involved in planning for their learning.
Yes.
Expressing and representing their learning in a way that's authentic to them, individual, creative. They do critical thinking, they communicate, they collaborate, and they share what they know, what they can do, and how they came to know and do what they know and do. And then use that to self-regulate their understanding of their effort, their progress, and how they feel during each phase of learning. When that happens, when kids take more control of their planning for learning and the representing of their knowledge, and then producing representations of that knowledge, they get more naturally involved in monitoring and tracking the kinds of things that lead to mastery. And that's effort, progress, and their social and emotional state of well-being.
Let me be a devil's advocate right now, and I'm going to jump you right here, and let me be the devil's advocate and say, okay, why can't I do that in direct instruction model? Why can't I, teach a perfect lesson, go ahead and engage everyone in the classroom, really master that lesson in math or social studies, wherever, where I start with the anticipatory set, go through, Madeline Hunter's way of teaching, boom, 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 all the way through, and then check for understanding, and I'm good. Boom, golden. It's exactly what you're talking about, and that the kids learn, and we assess everything. What is the difference? What you're talking about, you're just using technology. What is that? What makes it even better, you think, using technology than when I just talked about the old-fashioned Madeline Hunter way?
Yeah. Well, because the old-fashioned way just privileges surface learning. That's the kind of learning where students just memorize basic facts, basic details, the things that they can recall, simple information. The surface learning just gets held onto our short-term memory for a short period of time. Maybe it gets into working memory. But if we don't deepen that understanding, we'll lose it. And that's the challenge of staying at the direct instruction surface level. There's a place for direct instruction, for sure, but it's in that first phase of learning, the surface level phase. We need to have students go deeper and create representations of understanding, to create metaphors, to create elaborations, to tell stories, to connect that knowledge in some way that's meaningful to them in contexts that were not the same context in which they learned it. So if they deepen their understanding, that helps to actually consolidate that surface learning. So the surface learning becomes deeply consolidated while they're acquiring that deep knowledge. And when they create representations and knowledge models, they are able to demonstrate conceptual understanding, communicate the conceptual understanding, and model it. And those are the strategies in the production element of the transformation technology. And it goes deeper.
Right.
The next element is called contribution.
But can you give me some concrete? I want some before I get to that. I wanted some concrete examples, because when I'm understanding this, and like, for example, when I tutor the SAT, I really want kids to start thinking out of the box. Not we're just going to teach you a certain strategies. We're going to break down a lot of school strategies that are not taught, where you're gonna really analytically think. You're gonna own the passage. Let's say in reading, you're going to be able to analyze it, ask yourself questions, go through, evaluate things that sometimes we're not getting in the classroom anymore. We're just teaching to a test, a specific rote memorization way. And I have to take a lot of kids through the SAT and take it in that way. So I'm saying I can do it without technology, but I do use some technology. What I'm trying to understand is the concrete examples of where you're driving us. You're exactly driving the right engine of what we want to do in education, but you're using the word technology. I haven't heard yet what technology are you using? So give me some concrete examples. I'm sorry I've covered this for over 10 years on my radio show. We've broken down everything in the world. I'm not going to just interview like another book, because I think you really have the right idea, and you have the right idea to how to reform education. But when you use the word technology, I'm waiting to hear, well, what's the technology you're telling us, Dr. Sonny? Go ahead. And then you can go back through to the next level. Yeah.
I will. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's so many great suites of productivity tools. Google Suite is a great suite of tools. Microsoft has the Office 365. These are open-ended tools that students can produce collaborative documents that include words, pictures, sounds, videos, and hyperlinks. It changes everything. So now a student can produce a hyperdoc, a Google Doc, that has all sorts of different multimedia representations of what a child thinks about finding the slope of a line, and can connect the concept of finding the slope of a line to something that interests them, like skateboarding or skiing or snowboarding.
And you're using Bloom's taxonomies with technology. And you're using Bloom's taxonomies with did you know my background? I'm no longer teaching, but I did teach for X amount of years. I don't know if you did that research on me or what. So
I do know that. I did. I did indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you see, I've been interviewing other people after that. But I mean, when I'm listening to you, I agree with you wholeheartedly. When you bring up these tools,
Yeah.
there are lots of people that just don't have technology. For example, I guess it keeps my living going that I'm able to go and explain how to even do a social media post to teach people to specifically how you address things. Even young kids, they think they know technology, but they ultimately cannot create a product. So you're saying through this technology, through the things that they're going to use in work in their lives when they have to apply for jobs, because everything's technology now. You don't call on the phone. You use Zoom. You have a Zoom conference call. You have to learn how to attach documents. You have to learn how to create PowerPoints or create presentations or do video presentations. That is all. You want to use that in the learning phase to reach the objectives so far, if I'm on the right track.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. It's the learning intentions. Everything has to start with a learning intention. What do you want the child to be able to know and do, and what does success look like? So in my strategies, I have students produce mastery goals where they produce their own learning goal that's reflective of the learning intention by the teacher. And then the student keeps track. They monitor his or her own progress using a Google Sheet. I've created a Google tool on Google Sheets where students can track and visualize their effort, their progress, and how they feel at every stage of the learning. The surface learning, deeper learning, and knowledge transfer. And when kids do that, they engage in the process of self-regulation.
Yes.
They're more self-reflective, and they use the technology with more intentionality to produce a representation that shows this is my representation of this learning intention. Here's how I know it. Here's how I know it. And here's how I got there. And using all those technologies that I mentioned, including video and audio and these category of tools that are called screencasting tools. Like Google has a wonderful extension in Chrome called Screencastify. It's totally free. And kids can create their own Ken Burns style videos, movies.
That's great.
Images or text or anything, and then narrate over it. So
that's fantastic. See, I would love to know that stuff just because
it's remarkable.
Because I bring certain people on my team to take care of things. If I could figure out how to do them, that's great. But see, that's where I was like to my daughter that has technology. She's 13 and my district does a great job in that. I'm like, hey, I can do this. I can do that. But the problem is we're not doing it in the classroom. We're doing it in a technology classroom. We're doing it in a computer classroom instead of integrating, because honestly, the biggest problem, we're going to take another break, but a real quick break. But when we get back, I'm going to address this next point, but I'm absolutely getting you now. It took a little time to understand, and my questioning. You've probably not been questioned by an educator like this. That's not as high up as you are, Dr. Sunny. But I at least get the opportunity on my radio show. So when we get back, we're gonna go ahead and talk with Dr. Sunny Magana here on the on the Total Education Hours, disruptive classroom technologies, and the discussion, and really looking at, hey, we're not just checking a box, and we'll talk more about that. You're listening to Total Education Hour on 88.3 WRCT in Pittsburgh, and we're streaming live at WRCT.org, hashtag WRCT. When we get back, this is just a phenomenal conversation. He is really interesting, and this is something I recommend any teacher to check out. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Education Hour on 88.3 WRCT in Pittsburgh, and we're streaming live at WRCT.org, hashtag WRCT, and I'm with Dr. Sunny Magana. Now, Dr. Sunny, one thing I'll say is my transformation is at 10 years before I became a teacher, there's no way I could go speak in front of 3,000 people in front. If I didn't do radio for 10 years, there's no way I could do a presentation. Through learning how to do it and doing it thousands and thousands of times, using technology, understanding things, practice makes perfect. I can now talk in front of lots of people. I think you understand that for sure. But that's the thing. These kids need to experience all this, so they're not learning it in college. And that's the point where I love what you're talking about, because if the teachers don't understand the technology, the kids don't understand the technology. And when they get to college and college tries to check it off the box, and then they get that teacher that's innovative that says, hey, I know what the job market's like. I know what they're expecting to make you a possible software salesperson or whatever technology you're going to get involved in. You're going to have to use technology 24/7 every second of the day and be able to create your own projects, or you're not going to get hired. We need to teach it early. And I see where that point.
Right.
So, am I right about this? And not just checking off a box saying, yeah, we just created a PowerPoint. Yeah, we just did this. But really, you just had your parents do it. The kids didn't create it themselves.
Yeah, no, that's it. It has to be authentic and it has to be intentional. So student use of technology that leads to really significant gains is the kind of technology where students are more involved in how they share their learning authentically and
Yes.
keep their learning journeys represented authentically. And in the second part of the transformational domain is what I call contribution. And that's where students, in addition to keep creating mastery goals, producing mastery goals, keep tracking and monitoring their effort and their progress, and producing knowledge representations. Now those knowledge representations are tutorials, giving kids the opportunity to teach other kids what they know allows children to learn from mastery. And it is so clear in the existing research. It goes
Oh,
back
I believe
hundreds of years.
I used it all in my classroom all the time. When I taught, I would just turn the tables around and say, hey, you outline the chapter in social studies.
Yeah.
I'll see you in the morning and you're teaching the lesson to us and I'll just be out there facilitating. And it works. But I didn't have the technology that's involved now. It works so much, but it's so much. It's not so much work. It teaches kids to be teachers. And the only way you're going to learn things is through teaching them. For sure.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. So that shifts the control from the teacher as the deliverer of information to students as knowledge architects that are purposely producing contributive knowledge examples to teach their classmates, to teach their peers what they know. Kids teaching kids works, and when kids use technology, not just to simply consume a video, a digital video, some kind of academy video online. Have kids create their own academy.
Yeah.
Have your school create your own academies of student-generated videos. Kids teaching kids is one of the most powerful ways we can use different technology tools. And all those tools that I mentioned, the Google Suite, open-ended productivity tools, interactive whiteboard software, Promethean has probably the best interactive whiteboard software that I've seen, and it's really open-ended productivity. Microsoft has OneNote, really powerful multimedia tools. Have kids use those tools to teach each other what they know.
I love it.
And you'll see an explosion in your classroom.
Let's see. So the reason they're writing the book in that way is showing these things.
Yeah.
And how many people are out there, Dr. Sunny, telling what you're saying? They use technology and talk about the same old, same old. You're bringing up, and I think I'm on the right track. You want real world, authentic learning that they can utilize when they get they go on to their careers.
Yeah, exactly. And the strategies in the transformational domain have an effect size of 1.6, which is equivalent to quadrupling student achievement.
Oh my gosh!
Now I'm actually undershooting it. When I'm daring people, I dare everybody listening to this radio station to take the T3 challenge and double student achievement because it's within our grasp. And my findings and my research methods on the T3 framework, on that doubling student achievement, actually, effect size of 1.6 is quadrupling. They were just peer-reviewed and inducted into the University of Oxford's Research Encyclopedia for Education,
Wow.
which is really...
How many school districts are doing this right now? How many people are doing this right now, school districts? Yeah.
There's about 36 school districts and schools all around the country, in fact, all around the world, that have picked up on the T3 framework as the method to enhance their instructional strategy, the instructional model, and their learning model in school. And it's growing. Like every day I hear from more people that are learning about my book and learning about the research. The induction into Oxford has been just a humbling and deeply rewarding experience, because it means that my findings were really kind of vetted by the pinnacle research
Yes.
institution in the world. And so more and more people are taking the T3 challenge and learning how to unleash students' authentic passion and purpose for learning. And that's, if you give each kid an opportunity to make the world a better place by teaching someone or by solving a wicked problem or learning how to, create an app that solves a problem, that's transcendent.
Yes, it's truly.
That's the kind of thing that transcends the limitations.
See, but that's what made me excited as a teacher. Duquesne University, where I got my master's degree, really taught me what you're talking about, Dr. Sonny. But we went through that shift in that time in 20 years after September 11th and all the different things. I went to school, got my master's degree, went on to teach, and we just went into this common first No Child Behind and Common Core, and we forgot about all this. We forgot that the way we're going to get student achievement is by giving ownership of the kids' learning, doing specific things, developing and mastering. But we don't have teachers that can even literally teach a lesson anymore. And this is where we need the adoption of what you're doing. And I think that the way that makes it unique is involving technology, right? Because we've had a lot of these techniques that you're talking about. They're in books all over the place, right? But not involving the technology, right? From what your research has shown. How
exactly.
many?
That's exactly right. In fact, I can in my book I have a lot of musical metaphors because I'm a rock musician. As I told you, I learned how to play a long time ago, and I've been still using Eddie Van Halen's framework to think about my musicianship. And I want teachers to do the same thing. Use the T3 framework to think about your instructional artistry and science, and really shift your classroom so that teachers don't have to work so hard. At the end of the day, teachers go home more exhausted than their kids not doing it right. The kids should be far more exhausted. And raise the conversation in your classroom. Change it from a monologue to dialogues. That's really what it comes down to. Change the conversation.
Right.
That kids are involved in teaching each other and discussing their understanding, playing with the learning, playing with their understanding, developing models, sharing.
How can we get the people that are so
enhances all
that like, for example, I'm just going to talk about the conversations I have with my daughter. She's in a great public school, but she's in the middle school, and all they do is paper pencil. Or, and then have homework where it's constant. Yeah. There's not that interaction. How can we get these teachers to buy into it? How many of your 36 schools around the globe have the kind of handcuffing that we're dealing with in our public education system? You have some innovative principals or school districts that say, hey, I want to do this. How can we get rid of what these teacher textbooks and these curriculums that just want to just check off the box, let's pass this goofy standardized test, instead of let's achieve our student learning so our kids can be prepared for the 21st century and on?
Well, it's a great synthesis, Neil. What you're talking about is the difference between learning for minimum proficiency or learning for mastery. We need to make a shift from a minimum proficiency compliance instructional model and an education model to an education model that's focused on mastery and giving students the opportunity to master content by going through the surface learning, deeper learning, and knowledge transfer, and teach each other and then applying their knowledge to solve wicked problems that matter to them. And really, I can sum up my research in a simple metaphor, a rock and roll metaphor. When it comes to modern teaching and learning, high-impact pedagogy is the melody, and high-impact technology use adds the harmony. And together you get great music.
Now, one of the things...
whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Right. And this is where I got in a little bit of trouble. I was almost on Fox being interviewed by Megyn Kelly based on the Chicago teacher strike, and the thing before Megyn Kelly got to Fox, and meaning she was still on the morning, and I got pulled at the last minute. But my point to get on the show was I could spot a great teacher from observing for 3 to 4 minutes, and that absolutely outraged people. But we know even if the kids are disruptive or it's a bad day, you can feel when a teacher is just has everything in motion and understands how to teach.
Yep.
Why can't we evaluate that way instead of the student achievement by just spotting, oh my gosh, this is what they're doing? And there's sometimes you're just not going to see it in the standardized tests, what you're going to see these kids develop to prepare them for high school, to prepare them for college so that they can be successful. So we don't have a 50% dropout rate in college. What is the number? It's atrocious. All that. Yeah.
Too high. Yeah, no, I agree. And in fact, I can take that and add it to it a little bit. Show me a teacher who's mastering the art and science of teaching, and I'll show you students who are mastering the art and science of learning. The two go hand in hand.
Yes.
Teachers are leaders and learners.
Yes.
Students are also potential learning leaders. Give students the opportunity to master the art and science of learning, and then as teachers, you will master the art and science of teaching. Together, we'll make great music.
And if it's
I think you walk into a classroom, you immediately sense if somebody is an artist and a scientist.
Yes.
That's what you can see.
I completely
with all of your senses.
And when I got out of the classroom, and it was because my school closed, and I moved on to other things and tutoring and consulting, now entrepreneurship and all these different things. But when I get to talk to you, it just gives me that why I loved being in the classroom. Why I love working with kids on one-on-one. Yeah. But when you're handcuffed to not be able to do those creative things, and you're stuck doing teacher prep for standardized tests, and we're not talking about kids engaging and learning, it's a sad situation. And Dr. Sonny, you're on the right track, but you have an uphill battle just till we change our education system in a way to go back to what it was when I entered Duquesne University, that we are here to individualize and engage students to reach the highest achievement each one can. Highest. And why can't we do that?
Exactly.
And in the Common Core framework, no knock on it, I'm saying the way it's taught is awful. It has some good ideas, but no research base. What you're talking about is something innovative and real world where, hey, mom and dad are doing this stuff, or they need to be doing this stuff because that's how you're going to get a job. It's no longer about your degree anymore. It's about your skills. And I think you're spotting that right now in that transition.
Yeah. And what we need to do is to ensure that, the evidence speaks for itself. I mean, doubling academic achievement. I've got schools that are demonstrating a doubling of academic achievement. That will speak for itself. So that's how we're going to change hearts and minds, is to show folks that this evidence that's behind the T3 framework is legit, it's applicable, and it's right within our grasp. But I've made it easier for folks to master these strategies and created an online platform called the T3 Academy. And in the T3 Academy, teachers, coaches, principals can earn a certificate. They can get credentialing on this innovation method and learn not only how to unleash students' limitless potential, but be able to measure it in ways that should complement high-stakes tests on the Common Core. Not replace them, but complement them. We need to have a teacher voice, the student voice, and classroom effect sizes to really get the portrait of what's happening in our classrooms.
Phenomenal show. I mean, you blew me away. I don't think I got a review of your book. I want to read it, but I recommend all teachers that check you out, Google you, especially this show is not as much for promotion, but let's stay in touch. You have something that I would love to help you out with. Let's stay in touch and see how I can get you to as many classrooms across the country, collaborate with as many educators as possible, because, you have the blueprint. We just need to say, let's test this out. We haven't improved in student achievement. Let's make learning fun for kids, but also make it change and transform where we're going. Because that's the bottom line. That reason why educators like myself are like, hey, you know what? I'm glad I'm out of the classroom. But if it was like that, and we were really focusing on having the best teachers in the buildings, who knows where we can go? And you talked about that double improvement. That's fantastic. So again, thanks for calling, Dr. Sonny. One more what tip would you give the teachers right now that try to implement those things? What do they need to do? Not reading your book, but like a quick thing before they pick up your book. Really look at some of these different technologies you brought up, right?
Yeah, think about that framework. Are you going to use technology just to translate? Are you going to use technology to transform students into teachers? Or are you going to use technology to transcend the limitations for which public education was originally designed? Think of that framework. Are you playing Country Roads by the campfire? Are you rocking out like Chuck Berry? Or are you innovating like Eddie Van Halen?
All right, that was the Total Education Hour, guys. Take care, everyone.